Let me ask you something that might sting a little. Have you ever stood in the garden center parking lot, loading bag after bag of potting mix into your trunk, watching that receipt climb past $100, then $150, then $200, all for what amounts to a box of fancy dirt? If that scenario sounds painfully familiar, you're not alone. And here's the kicker. You've been paying premium prices for something your plants will barely even touch. The gardening industry has sold us all a myth, and today we're going to tear it wide open. What you're about to learn might save you hundreds of dollars and completely change the way you think about growing food at home. If you're ready to stop getting ripped off and start gardening smarter, stick around, hit that like button, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. So let's start with some math that's going to make your wallet weep. A standard raised bed, the kind you see in every backyard gardening tutorial, measures about 4 feet by 8 feet and sits about a foot deep. That's 32 cubic feet of volume you need to fill. At your local garden center, that translates to roughly 16 giant bags of potting mix. Each one of those bags will run you somewhere around $12, sometimes more depending on where you live and what brand you grab. By the time you've wrestled all those bags into your car, driven them home, stacked them in your yard, and sliced them open one by one, you've spent nearly $200. And that's just for one bed. Want a second bed? Double it. 3 beds? Now you're looking at $600 before you've even planted a single seed. Here's where it gets infuriating. Most of that expensive soil you just bought is going to sit there doing absolutely nothing. It's buried in the lower half of your raised bed, untouched, unreached, and completely useless to your plants during that first season. The garden centers don't mention this little detail. They just point you toward the wall of premium mixes, show you the price tags, and tell you to fill every inch. But when you actually look at the science, when you examine what's really happening beneath the surface, the whole thing starts to look less like helpful advice and more like a brilliant business strategy designed to empty your bank account. Think about it for a second. What vegetables are you actually growing in that raised bed? Lettuce? Spinach? Radishes? Those plants barely send roots down 6 inches. Even tomatoes, peppers, and carrots, plants with a reputation for reaching deep, rarely push their roots past 12 inches in normal garden conditions. University extension programs across the country have published charts showing exactly this. The overwhelming majority of root activity happens near the surface, right where water and nutrients are easiest to find. The bottom half of your raised bed? For most crops, it's basically a no-go zone. The roots stay high, chasing warmth and moisture in that top layer, while the expensive soil below sits untouched like money buried in a hole. This isn't speculation or theory. If you want proof, dig up a mature raised bed at the end of the growing season. You'll find a thick, tangled network of roots concentrated near the surface and almost nothing reaching the bottom. The biology simply doesn't support the expense. What your plants actually need is a fertile top layer, somewhere between 6 and 10 inches deep. The rest of that space can be filled with something else entirely. Something that doesn't come wrapped in plastic. Something that might already be rotting in your backyard right now. Here's where the whole game changes. Every yard, every neighborhood, every street has a hidden supply of what most people consider waste. Fallen branches after a storm. Old logs that have been sitting behind the shed for years. Last autumn's leaf piles. Trimmings from a neighbor's tree service. Instead of hauling this material to the curb or paying someone to take it away, it becomes the foundation of your raised bed. The lower half, roughly 40 to 50% of that total volume, doesn't need premium soil at all. It needs bulk, and wood delivers that in spades. A single 4x8 raised bed can swallow up a surprising amount of material. A few logs from a branch that came down in a windstorm, a wheelbarrow or 2 of sticks, a dense layer of leaves raked up in the fall. Thick branches, old firewood, even those gnarly half-rotted pieces that seem completely useless, all have a role to play here. The materials don't have to look pretty, they just need to be untreated and free of paint or chemical preservatives. As you stack each piece into that empty box, it fills up fast, and suddenly your need for expensive bagged soil drops by half. But wait, there's more going on here than just saving money. That rotting wood at the bottom of your bed doesn't just fill space. It transforms the way water moves through your entire garden. Each log, branch, and chunk of decomposing wood acts like a natural sponge. The pores and fibers soak up rainfall and irrigation water, holding onto moisture that would otherwise drain straight through and disappear. Scientific tests have shown that decomposing wood can store up to 5 times its own weight in water. Let that sink in for a moment. A single log weighing 10 pounds can lock in 50 pounds of water, then slowly release it back to the soil above as your plant roots need it. During those brutal dry spells in midsummer, when the surface cracks and everything looks parched, that hidden reservoir beneath becomes a lifeline. Gardeners who use this method consistently report watering their beds half as often as their neighbors. Moisture meters placed deep in these beds show a steady supply of dampness even after weeks without rain. The wood layer encourages capillary action, drawing water upward toward thirsty roots instead of letting it pool uselessly at the bottom or drain away entirely. This is why beds built with a waste layer stay lush and productive even when the hose stays coiled up in the garage. Now here's where it gets really interesting. As that wood decomposes beneath the surface, it does more than just hold water. It generates heat. This is the quiet engine working away in every waste layer bed, and it's powered by pure biology. The breakdown of logs and branches releases thermal energy, raising the temperature of the soil above by several degrees. Soil scientists have measured this effect directly, and the numbers are significant. In early spring, beds built with a thick wood core can register temperatures 5 to 15 degrees warmer than the surrounding ground. When your neighbor's garden bed is still half frozen and sluggish from winter, your waste layer bed is already warm enough to coax seeds out of dormancy and push transplants into vigorous growth. This thermal boost doesn't just shave a day or two off your planting calendar. For many gardeners, especially those in regions with short growing seasons, it means planting 2 to 4 weeks earlier. Those extra weeks can be the difference between a full, abundant harvest and a disappointing finish, cut short by early frost. The warmth comes from the same process that heats up a compost pile, just spread out and insulated by the soil above. Microbes breaking down carbon-rich wood release energy as they work. On cold nights, that gentle heat rises, protecting young roots from frost damage and keeping soil temperatures in the ideal range for germination. The garden season starts earlier and runs longer, not because of an expensive greenhouse or a fancy heating cable, but because of quiet biological work happening out of sight, day after day. Now let's talk about what's actually inside those bags of potting mix you've been buying. They might look rich and dark and full of promise, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Most commercial blends are nearly lifeless. They're made primarily from peat moss and perlite, materials that arrive at the store almost completely sterile. There's no living network inside, no active biology, just inert particles sitting there waiting for you to dump chemical fertilizer on them. In contrast, the buried wood and leaves at the bottom of a waste layer bed become a living engine. As the wood breaks down, it gets colonized by fungi. Thin white threads of mycelium weave through every crevice, creating what soil scientists describe as nutrient highways. These fungal networks connect the decaying wood directly with the plant roots above. Instead of relying on synthetic fertilizers to push nutrients through the soil, the mycelium delivers them naturally, breaking down tough plant fibers and releasing minerals in a steady, sustainable flow. Studies have shown that mycelium can transport phosphorus, nitrogen, and even water from deep inside a rotting log straight to a tomato root faster than water alone could travel through plain soil. You're not just filling space when you build this way. You're constructing a microbial reef that feeds itself and your plants simultaneously. As the wood decays over time, it forms humus, that dark, crumbly material that stays loose and fluffy and never compacts into a hard block like peat moss tends to do. The soil stays open, full of air pockets and fungal threads. Dig into a waste layer bed after a couple of years and you'll see the difference immediately. A handful of that soil is dark, springy, and absolutely teeming with life. Compare that to bagged mixes, which often turn dense and lifeless after a single season. The living soil doesn't just feed your plants. It renews itself, cycling nutrients and keeping the whole ecosystem in motion. Healthier crops, less work, and a bed that actually improves every single year. All powered by fungi and microbes doing what they've done for millions of years. So why doesn't the gardening industry tell you any of this? Because they're not selling soil. They're selling a cycle. Every spring, millions of gardeners haul home bag after bag, pouring money into a system designed specifically for repeat business. Industry reports show retail profit margins on bagged mixes hovering around 50%. For every dollar you spend, half goes straight to the store's bottom line. The ingredients themselves are cheap. Peat moss, perlite, a handful of filler, all wrapped in plastic, destined for the landfill. Over 500 million plastic bags of potting mix get sold in this country every single year. Most are used once, then tossed. That's more than 1 billion pounds of plastic waste annually, just to deliver a product that compacts and loses its effectiveness in a single season. The business model depends on you coming back, not just for more soil, but for fertilizer to revive your tired beds and additional bags to top off what's settled. The message is clear: when the bag runs out of nutrients, buy another. When the soil compacts, buy more. It's a perfect system for the industry. For gardeners and for the planet, it's an absolutely raw deal. Building a bed the smarter way follows what permaculture practitioners call the Lasagna Protocol, and it's beautifully simple. The first layer is your core. Fill the bottom 40% with thick, untreated logs and sturdy branches. Hardwoods work best here, things like oak, maple, or fruitwood. Avoid cedar because it breaks down too slowly, and definitely skip black walnut since it releases juglone, which is toxic to many vegetables. The second layer is your filter. Pack smaller sticks, twigs, and leaves tightly into the gaps between those logs. Straw or shredded cardboard works great here too, creating a dense carbon-rich mat that holds moisture and air. The third layer is absolutely non-negotiable: the nitrogen buffer. Spread 2 to 4 inches of fresh grass clippings, aged manure, or even diluted urine directly over that filter layer. This feeds the microbes breaking down the wood and prevents them from stealing nitrogen from your plants. Skip this step and you'll get yellow leaves and stunted growth guaranteed. Finally, add just 6 to 10 inches of rich compost or garden soil on top. That's where your roots will actually live and grow. The cost difference is staggering. One gardener tracked her expenses over a full season. Her traditional bed, filled completely with bagged potting mix, cost just under $200. Her waste layer bed, built the exact same size, totaled $45, mostly for a few bags of compost to put on top. That's over $150 saved on a single bed. After a week without rain, her moisture probe showed the standard bed reading dry and parched, while the waste layer bed still registered damp. Her irrigation log showed she watered the wood-filled bed half as often as the other one. 2 years later, she dug into that waste layer bed and found the wood softer, the soil above rich and black, full of earthworms and fine roots. The fertility kept climbing while she stopped hauling bags and spending hundreds every spring. Right now, millions of plastic soil bags fly off shelves every spring, fueling landfill waste and draining wallets for results that fade by autumn. But every fallen branch, every pile of leaves, every log rotting behind your shed represents potential, not trash. As resource prices climb and water becomes more precious, the real value lies in building enduring, living soil from materials we already have. Sometimes the richest ground starts with what others throw away. Now I want to hear from you. Have you tried building raised beds this way? Are you going to give it a shot this spring? Drop your thoughts and questions in the comments below. And if this opened your eyes to a better way of gardening, smash that subscribe button so we can keep exposing the things the industry doesn't want you to know.